Okay, well, it's 5 after. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us today. This is Nicole Wise with Holganix here, Director of Marketing. I am with lovingly known as Dr. Bob here in our office, Dr. Neidermyer. He is the Director of Plant and Soil Sciences. And this is his contact information here. So if anybody wants to reach out to him, you'll have his contact information. He's going to take us through some aeration and seeding key takeaways or key ideas today, and so we thank him for his time and for joining us. The agenda: we're going to talk about why, when, and where to aerate and seed, and then aeration and seeding with Holganix. How can the Holganix help in your aeration and seeding services? I'm going to show you a few customer examples, and then we'll have some question and answer time. So before we get started, I'd like to just start out with a poll question. So if we, the first poll question is, how many of you offer aeration and seeding services already? So let's launch. So you have two choices. You can answer I do or not yet. So if you could click one of those two, and in a second we'll be able to show everybody the results. All right, and let's see. Looks like most of you have voted. So it's now closed, and 100% of you said you do. Although I just had some technical difficulties. Oh, there we go. 100% of you said you offer aeration services already. So let's move on. My next question is, since all of you do aerate and seed, how many of you use Holganix? And you have 4 options to answer there. I do use Holganix during aeration and seeding. I'm testing. You don't use it with aeration and seeding yet. Or you're a distributor or sales rep and don't actually use the Holganix out on lawns. Okay, so 70% of you do use Holganix with your aeration and seeding, and 20% not yet. So hopefully we can move that 20% over. And as we move on, the 80% that do, I'm very anxious to hear your stories and how you've seen Holganix help with your aeration and seeding. So thanks for that input. It's always helpful to understand our audience and know who we're talking to.
It looks like it's quite a challenge, Nicole, because this group probably knows as much about aeration and seeding as we do here. So maybe we'll learn something from them.
Okay, so I'm going to close the poll. And you're right, Dr. Bob. We might have lots of interaction then. Please feel free. There's a chat box, so feel free to chat and ask questions as we go along. We can try and answer them throughout, and then there'll also be a question and answer at the end. So feel free to put questions in the chat box. So without further ado, I am going to turn this presentation over to you, Dr. Bob. So let's start with why, where, and when?
So the most important thing to know about aeration is it's an operation that needs to be done when your turf is vigorously growing. So for cool season grasses, that's in the fall of the year. This season that we're in right now, right up through and into October. And then for warm season grasses, it's just the opposite. In late spring to early summer, when those warm season grasses are really actively growing. Just a couple of things to know about the soil environment. If you noticed, we showed some things falling in there. Key amongst them are moisture and oxygen. Soil is a place that has, as one of its components, as 2 of its components are water and air. And it's very important. Water and air are very important to the roots. If we don't have air in the soil, then the roots are unable to respire. If they can't respire, they will die. So that's a little bit of some background on soil. And why do we do aeration? But generally, we do aeration for two reasons. One, the soil could be compacted. Two, it could have a thatch problem. Or, as you see in the slide, it could be newly developed land that's had a lot of construction equipment riding over it, and that builds compaction. Also, heavy foot traffic, a lot of kids and adults playing on the turf. And one that you might not have thought of is after sod installation. The fine soil associated with the sod forms a compact layer that won't let the moisture through on the heavier soil. So these are some reasons when it becomes critical to aerate.
Dr. Bob, when you say after sod, about how long do you want to take to let it really knit in before you do that?
You would, yes, certainly. That's a big problem. If you went in too early, you could rip the sod up. Normally, sod is installed in the spring or the fall of the year. So if it was installed in the spring, no problem doing it in the fall. If it was installed in the fall, you would wait until next year in the fall to aerate a sod.
All right.
So let's move on to the next slide.
So let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
So, why is aeration critical? So what's really happening when we're aerating, and why is it such a critical piece to help in those areas?
So when you do an aeration, it increases the activity of the soil microorganisms. It also makes it possible for water, nutrients, and oxygen to permeate the soil. All this has the effect of improving rooting. It's going to enhance soil filtration of water and nutrients associated with that water. And it will minimize the fertilizer and pesticide runoff. One thing that's not on there is it will help to break down thatch. And one of the things I wanted to do was to give you some pros and cons of thatch, because thatch isn't all bad. And another thing I want to point out is break down a commonly held belief that thatch is the result of lawnmower clippings. And this is not the case. Lawnmower clippings are generally leaves, and leaves are very easily digested by microorganisms in the soil and are not a contributor to thatch. The contributors to thatch are the part of the plants that have a lot of lignin in them, and this is generally stolons and rhizomes, things of that nature, and they're very difficult to break down. So, but let's talk about some pros of thatch. One is it insulates the roots against temperature stress. It reduces soil moisture fluctuation. In other words, you're not going to get a lot of evaporation of soil moisture through the thatch. It aids in the resilience to high traffic, like in an athletic field. For athletes, it softens the impact of a fall, and it improves the footing for athletes. Some of the cons, or the reason that thatch is a problem, is roots can desiccate from heat generated in a heavy thatch area. The thatch, when it's wet, is very difficult for oxygen to permeate. And as we talked earlier, oxygen is important to strong root growth. It promotes mower scalping. And really important, it harbors disease and insects. And also, it absorbs pesticides, so in effect rendering them ineffective or useless. So for the most part, the cons outweigh the pros, and the thatch needs to get handled. And one way to handle it and to get it to break down is to aerate the soil. Just a little bit more on thatch. The grass that is most conducive to producing thatch are things like Kentucky bluegrass, creeping fescue, creeping bentgrass, Bermuda grass, and zoysia. And some grasses that do not promote a lot of thatch buildup would be perennial ryegrass and tall fescue. So
those grasses that are promoters should be aerated more often, or it's more critical.
It's more likely that they're going to need to be done more frequently. That's correct.
Because they'll have more thatch.
Yes. Now let's talk about. Let's see. What's our next slide here? So again, we did say that the cool season grasses, like we have here in Pennsylvania, need to be aerated in the fall of the year. And warm season grasses are just the opposite. They are most actively growing in late spring and early summer. The key to remember is that you want to aerate during a period when the grass is very actively growing. So the equipment you want to use is, some people use spikes to aerate the soil. Not a good thing. Actually, spikes do put holes in the soil, but you're actually just pushing the soil apart, and it leads to compaction. So an ideal aeration is going to be with equipment that will actually, they're hollow, it goes down into the soil, and it'll pull plugs of soil up. You want to have the machine that will put 20 to 40 holes per square feet. Most likely to accomplish that, you're going to have to at least go across the lawn twice, if not 2 or 4 times, or 3 to 4 times, in order to get the 20 to 40 holes per square foot. Now, a moist soil is what you need in order to get that accomplished, but a wet soil is a bad thing, because if the soil is too wet, it'll plug up those holes and actually pack them solid so that they're not going to be pulling plugs out of the soil. And also, if it's a dry soil, you're not going to penetrate the soil. You're just going to ride across the top, and you're not going to make holes. So if it hasn't rained, close to the time that you want to do an aeration operation, you're going to want to irrigate the lawn. And again, you want to come in when the soil is moist, not wet.
And Dr. Bob, when you're pulling the plugs, why is that important over this? You said the spikes push the soil down and compact it, but the plugs, then they make this mess on the lawn and they're everywhere. Is there a benefit to that?
Yeah, actually, when you're pulling up bacteria along with the plugs, so you're getting bacteria and fungi from the soil actually up on the soil surface in the top of the soil, and it's going to help with the thatch decomposition. The plugs, although they may be unsightly initially, rapidly break down as they dry and as the rain falls on them. So both the dry and the wet has these plugs break apart and fall back into the soil.
And that's essentially what we want. We want that
exactly.
Broken back down. Gotcha.
Also, one other thing, when you're mowing your lawn, that's also going to facilitate the breakdown of those plugs. So key elements to think about is that you need to water, or has it rained, or are you going to have to irrigate? You want it moist, you don't want it wet. You need to have adequate coverage for both aeration and then seeding, because as we mentioned, part of this operation is aerating and seeding. And it's really a wonderful thing, because when you do seed, after you've aerated, these seed fall down into the holes that you've created, and it's just a great environment for grass seed to germinate. An important thing to note here is some of the mechanical features of your lawn need to be noted, because you don't want to damage the electric fences that you've placed in there to keep the dogs from getting out of your yard. You don't want to damage the irrigation head, so you need to know where these things are. And a third feature is you also want to know where there may be a septic tank, for emptying. So, and you don't want to damage this area either. Um, so once you get this done, the aeration done, and I said you're going to go 2 to 4 times in order to get the 20 to 40 holes per square foot. Then you want to seed, and you're going to make several passes with the seed as well, because you want to get a good distribution of the seed across the lawn. And if you do have a good distribution, you're going to have seed associated with the holes. And if you get the seed in these holes as the moisture builds up, it just in the normal course of the fall, it's just a great environment for seed germination. Now, speaking of seed germination, that's where one of the things that's a benefit of using Holganix. Grass seed responds very well to Holganix. The Holganix promotes grass seed germination, and it hastens the initial growth of the seedling. So you get a vigorous growth and a strong root establishment when you've used Holganix. Another benefit of the Holganix, in addition to the seeding, is that you get the microorganisms that are active in promoting breakdown of thatch. So you're going to have promotion of seed germination, promotion of growth, and promotion of thatch breakdown from using Holganix.
And if you were to say, Holganix is a multi-level product, lots of different things involved, what would you say is the key ingredient within Holganix that helps during aeration and seeding?
Well, it is multi-layered, but I'd say that the key ingredients are the addition of the microorganisms. Another benefit is the fulvic acids, the organic acids in the product. And I'd say those two things.
Those two things are key. Good.
So that was just a shot showing you the roots being enhanced by Holganix after germination.
And this part comes from the mycorrhizae?
Well, the mycorrhizae associate with the roots, and they do stimulate root growth. That's correct. And some of you may know a lot about mycorrhizae, but just in case you don't, mycorrhizae are fungi that live in the soil. They are in our product, and they function in the soil in association, a symbiotic association with plant roots. So fungi do not have chlorophyll, and so they can't they do not have a photosynthesis process. Plants do have chlorophyll and do photosynthesis. And in that process, plants make sugars and carbohydrates that are actually exuded by the roots. And then the mycorrhizae, which is a fungi, use that sugar as a food source. And in return, they can grow actually longer and deeper than roots grow, and so they bring moisture and fertility back to the roots. It's a very good exchange that these two organisms, plants and mycorrhizae, have with each other.
Awesome. So that's really good science information. That's what I love when we get to interview Dr. Bob. So let's talk about a few customer stories. Keep in mind, several of you said you use Holganix in your aeration and seeding. We'd love to hear your story. So if you have anything similar to the ones we're going to show you, please feel free to reach out. Give us a call or send a contact note in on our website, and we'd love to hear about your aeration story. So let's look at these two stories.
These are some cool season grasses in Indiana. Going through a process of 12 days after seeding and 22 days after seeding, and then 7 months later. So you can see how quickly the grass got established between the just up and out in 12 days, filling in and getting dense after 22 days, and through the next spring and into the summer, just a beautiful lawn.
Terry and his sales representative actually had their quote was, "We should have gotten a speeding ticket because the seed germinated so quickly, it was unbelievable." So that was their comment on how the Holganix helped speed up that process.
And this was a Pennsylvania grower. The seed in pot number 1 was a seed that was Hydra Compost. Put a green color onto the soil, so although it looks like one of the better treatments, it really isn't. Most of the color you're seeing is from the green compost on the soil. 2 and 3 are without any Holganix, just fertilizer. 4, the best treatment in the trial was the Holganix treatment with fertilizer, and this seed germinated faster, much faster with the help of Holganix. And the other 2 treatments are fertilizer without the Holganix. So, and we get this result over and over again. It would be an easy test for you to do yourself if you just put, plant grass in 2 pots and treat both with fertilizer and 1 with Holganix. You'll get a result like the comparison between pots 3 and 4.
And I believe Sam Whitehouse of Whitehouse Landscaping, his guys were kind of doubting the Holganix and why they were doing it and questioning, and he said, "I'll show you. Let's do a test, and this will be, and it'll show you." So he was really going after his staff to show them what result they would get as they were using the Holganix with seed. And again, and it had nothing, like, we didn't help them, we didn't do anything with it. We just got this story back from them. So it's always awesome to get that feedback from customers.
Okay. So do any of you have a story you'd like to share with us? You said some of you are using Holganix.
So I'm going to open things up here. Dr. Bob has a question for, let's see if anybody has some questions they want to share. So let me see if I can open this up so you guys can have a conversation. I am going to try and unmute you guys. Okay, so everybody is unmuted at this moment. Anybody have any stories to share? We've got some good piano music.
If you don't have any stories to share, maybe if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them from you.
Yeah, I believe the next slide just says questions. So if you have any questions or stories to share. We have a shy group. Nobody wants to share or ask questions today?
Well, I've really been pleased to have an opportunity to talk to you about aeration. It's a really important thing you can do with good results for your customers. And those of you who are doing it probably recognize that it's a good profit enhancer. It's another service that you can bill out and give a good benefit in return for that billing. So it's a win-win for you and your customer.
All right. So unless you have any questions, feel free to end your session. If you have questions or want to stay on, feel free. Looks like there might be some questions here that I couldn't see. I'm sorry. How do I make this bigger? So there was no video. Everybody should have been able to see our screen now. I'm hoping now as I see these questions. I apologize.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is Dan, Florence Scotts Lawn Service in Odessa, Texas, or West Texas.
Hi, Dan.
Yes, sir. Dr. Bob, you said not to aerate like the warm season grasses in the fall. Well, now it's not
Yes.
fall yet, but I overseed with ryegrass and I aerate.
Yeah, that's fine because it's going to help the ryegrass.
But why couldn't I aerate like I say I've got a hard core and I need to penetrate it. I mean, we really don't get cold till probably in November.
Yes.
We have some cool nights and stuff, but it doesn't really get down cold.
Well, it's just that in order to have the best benefit for the warm season grass, it's recommended that you do it in the late spring or early summer. It's not that it's going to hurt. It won't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the benefit for the warm season grass is not going to be as pronounced in the fall of the year. But it will help the ryegrass. And if you're going to be so you're going to be planting the ryegrass into the warm season grass, and then aeration is a good idea because you're going to open that soil up and make a good environment for the ryegrass to germinate.
Well, I wanted to put the 10-1-2 down whenever or 10-2-1. I never can remember which one it is.
Yeah.
But I'll put that down when I aerate.
Yes, it works. That's a good idea.
And, yeah, I just I've been using Holganix for a few months, but I haven't done the aeration to put it down. So that's the only reason I haven't put it down, because I haven't done any.
But do you put down? Do most of your customers want you to put down ryegrass?
No, I'm a franchisee. I do pretty well what I want to. If they don't pay my bills, they take my money. And I mean, Scotts is a good company. Don't get me wrong there, but I think they concentrate too much on putting regular fertilizer down and not conditioning the soil to propagate the plant.
Well, if you're going now, so let's say for instance that you have a zoysia lawn, so you've got that's a lawn that creates a lot of thatch. So you got to make sure that it's going to be moist so that you can penetrate, and that you're going to be pulling plugs up, and then putting the Holganix down is going to help break down that thatch in the fall. So that's a good idea, especially if you're going to then overseed with the ryegrass.
Yes, sir. Yeah, just tell me, does the Holganix out here in West Texas? We got a lot of wells, and they're pretty heavy in those bicarbonates and stuff like that. The well contaminants. And I've just been using an acid to leach it out with, and I was just wondering, does the Holganix leach?
No, sir. It's going to stay in the top 6 inches.
Uh-huh. You don't think the humates in it will, or the fulvic acid, will help leach it out, though, huh?
Well, they're not going to go through into the well if that's what you're concerned about.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing in the Holganix product that is highly soluble and mobile in that way. It's all organic materials that are going to bind, in the soil, and like I say, stay in the top. I'd say 6 to 8 inches.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I'll just keep using I use a product called Aquafix or Calfa.
Uh-huh.
They both leach pretty well. I got a well that's got a real problem, and I put the Hydra Fix on it, and it just like it cleaned the roots, and the grass started growing great.
Uh-huh.
So,
good.
So another question.
Anyways,
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Another question somebody asked was, does it matter if Holganix is applied before or after seeding?
Actually, it doesn't matter as long as it's in close association with seeding. But the ideal is to apply it just after seeding.
Yeah. So it'll go down in the holes.
So it'll go down in the holes, associate with the recently planted seed.
Well, does using the granular or the spray, would either one of them be better?
The spray is better for this operation, but the granule will work as well because the granules have they're impregnated with Holganix.
Yeah. I know that putting the granular down it, I mean, it covers pretty good, but you know, that little bag will cover 10,000 square foot, but with the liquid, you know, it's solid.
Yes, sir.
You know, yeah. So I think I'm gonna do liquid.
I think you'll be pleased.
I have been so far. I just I'm not really testing anymore. I've been using it.
Great.
Most of the summer.
That's what we like to
I
hear.
don't know what Scotts is going to say about it, but on my website that I got through Yodel, I got Holganix on it. So I may be totally organic.
You teach them a thing or two.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, it's been my honor to have this opportunity to talk to you guys. And again, you can reach me at my email address or by calling that number, 866-56-EARTH. I'll be glad to take your calls or respond to your emails.
Also, evidently, we had a technical error that I didn't realize, so they weren't seeing a whole lot of what was on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I am so sorry about that, guys. I didn't see any of those questions till later. These webinars and using the software, you don't use it every day, and then you forget as you jump back into it. So I apologize for that. We will sync up both the PowerPoint with Dr. Bob's presentation here today when it comes out in the email. So look by today's Monday, by Wednesday, Thursday-ish, we will have that synced up, and we will send out an email with both the presentation as well as the audio synced together, and that will come out in an email. So I thank you so much for your time. Feel free to hang on and answer any questions, or you can hit the X in the top corner and close out your session. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.